So the title of my talk today, it's funny, we went to the archives at Unity Village, which is where Science of Mind archives are, and we were looking at all of Ernest Holmes' original papers and his talks and everything, and there was a lot of boxes that hadn't been opened yet, and one of the boxes was David Walker's, my teacher, my mentor. And the woman that took us on the tour of the archives, she was so instrumental in, she knows everything. Kathy, right? Kathy, she knows everything. And she's talking and everything, and so when I was leaving, she said to me, she said, someday we're going to have your stuff in this archive. And I said, not soon, not too soon though, right? Yeah. But I thought about it, and I thought about the talks I give and where they're going to be, and they're going to be archived, and they're going to be somewhere. And I really started thinking about it. I was like, you got to pay attention to what you're saying. Because someday someone's going to look at it and go, what? Yes, there was that gay minister. God, he was so loud. Because someone else said, I love watching you on Sundays. You're just so, and she took a breath and she went, I don't mean this as an insult. You're just so gay. I said, really? No, but I was like, I said, no, I know what you mean. She goes, no, you're just so free and open, and you just say whatever you're thinking. You don't even care what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. So today I'm caring what I'm saying. No, I'm always going to be that. Whatever comes through me comes through me. So my talk today is, who are you? Because that's one of the things I went to Missouri to ask. That's what I asked when I went on to the labyrinth. Who am I? Who am I really? I know I have so many different facets of my personality, and people think I'm one thing or another. But take a look at this picture. Lori found this. I mean, look at it. Think about the intense questionableness of this picture. It's like, as he's drawing, I'll take it later. As he's drawing an image of himself, the image of himself is drawing him. It's reciprocal. That's what's happening. As you are creating who you are creating is creating who you are. So everything you think, say, do, all of your actions, the way you live your life, while you are creating an image of that image is bouncing right back to you and creating even more. So that when I walked onto the labyrinth and I asked the question, who am I didn't have an answer. I really didn't. I was like, wow, I know all the things I've become. I know all the titles I've achieved and I've received, but who am I? And here's another question. Have you ever looked at yourself and in a very confused moment just go, who are you? How many of you have had that experience? Something happened, you behave a certain way, and you're like, who are you? Where did that come from? Yeah, that's been happening lately to me too. But here's the thing. Here's what happens. When you're at that moment when you're like, who are you? It's all behaviors based on beliefs that have brought you to that moment. But what happens is you create this persona, you create this personality, you create the way you behave and the way you react, and something in you, the authentic you, says, who are you? This isn't who you are, bless you. This isn't who you are. This is what you've perceived. This is what you've accepted. This is what you've somehow crafted as you, but it's not you. And that song, which I just found out this morning when I was researching it, which was written by a Christian group, the Just Be You song, it really gets it. Just be you. And it was funny. No, I'm going to get there in a minute. I want to jump ahead to this thing that I found out this morning. So now you'll be excited. You'll pay attention until I get there. So your present state of who you think you are right now, I want you to just look at it and ask yourself, is this really who I am, or is it who I've agreed to be? And if who I've agreed to be keeps creating who I think I am, how do you get out of that rat race? How do you get out of there? How do you find your authentic self? We hear that so much. So Marcus Aurelius wrote this. A person's worth is measured by the worth of what he values. And that's, of course, what he or she values. So what you value is what you spend most of your time thinking about. Now, I just want you to think about this week. Just this week. Forget about going back any further. What have you been thinking about? What has taken up, I like to now say, my mental real estate? Because whether you know it or not, even if it's a problem, I was talking to Reverend Genevieve about that. Even if it's a problem, that's what you value. Because that's what you've spent your mind thinking about, doing. That's what you've spent your energy on. That's what you've spent your vibration on. So when you say, what do I value? And we all come up with, well, I value peace, I value freedom, I value this, that. But is that what you spent your whole week thinking about? No, probably not. The real understanding of value is, what do you spend your mind doing? What occupies your mind? What occupies your being? That's what you value. Whether you know it or not, that is what you've decided to put your value on. And sometimes that's, that's annoying. So I want to just ask you, what has your attention? What has your attention right now? It could be your health, and you could value your health, and that's true. But are you valuing your health, or are you valuing the disease? Are you valuing the problem? Because which one gets your attention? The problem or the remedy? The relative issue or the truth? Practitioners are trained to use their minds to move energy. The problem is most practitioners, and I hate to generalize this, but I feel this way, most practitioners only use their mind to move energy when they're in a practitioner session or when they stop to do a treatment. You have to be doing it 24/7. That's a practitioner. That's someone who uses their mind in a valuable way. Yeah, that's right. You tell me. Yes. So, which brings me back to, who are you? What do I value? If what I value shows me who I am and gives me some pause, some thoughts, then what do I really value? So, that is a picture I took when I walked out of our house, and everybody was already over at the conference, and for some reason I was late getting to the conference. And oh, you can't see it there. Everybody turn around and look at that picture. There it is. Or there you go. Yeah. Thank you, Kirby. Yeah. Thank you, Swan. So, lights back on me. Thank you. So, so I walked out the door and I saw that and I stopped. I took the picture and something came over me. I was just standing there watching this. And I have like 4 or 5 pictures as it kept going down. And I thought, I value this moment. Not because it's a beautiful sunset, but because I am the beautiful sunset. And I don't always know that. I don't always appreciate that. I look at all the relative things happening in my life and I think I'm that guy. The guy that's challenged by this, or the guy that's struggling with this, or even the guy that has to deal with this issue. But I'm that. I'm the sunset. I'm the sunrise. I'm the sunset. I'm a really good production of Fiddler on the Roof. Clearly. Thank you. And I stood there, and I really, really basked in that idea. So, Tiffany already talked about it. That's the labyrinth at Unity Village. And those are 2 beautiful, beautiful places that we visit every year. But see that's a huge, huge labyrinth. So I want to tell you my story of the labyrinth. I got there early, so I was one of the first ones that walked in. And I walked in, maybe 3 or 4, but then they started coming in behind me. And I kept walking. And yes, I saw Tiffany on the labyrinth. I saw Brad. I saw Karen. I saw Kirby. I saw everybody on the labyrinth. But I wasn't really focused on anybody else. I really was focused on me. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I need to know from this labyrinth? But something happened in the middle of the labyrinth, and I honestly don't remember who it was. I think it was Brad, but I'm not sure, because it wasn't about who it was. And I was walking, and my path was here. I was going this way. And here's what's great about the labyrinth. People join you on your path, but they're on a different path, but you're in the same vicinity. You're walking the same way, but then their path goes that way, and you keep walking. And when this happened, and for some reason I think it was you, Brad, but I don't remember who it was, but whoever it was, I felt very good about. I was like, I love being on a journey with this person, whoever it was. And I'm walking and walking and walking, and then that person went that way, and I stopped. And I stopped, so I thought, how often in my life have I gotten really comfortable, and then something has veered off? And what do I do in that moment? Who am I in that moment? There's a part of me that wants to just hop and skip right over to that journey and go that way. But at the labyrinth, I realized, I said, no, every single one of us came into this world alone. Every single one of us will leave this world alone and yet connected to everything. And when we talk about values, what we value, you may value something for a very long time, and then it goes that way. And sometimes we do that hop, skip, and a jump to complacency, to convenience, to comfortableness, where we then just follow an old path and we still end up somewhere. Ironically, though, if you do that, most likely, if you jump over and follow the comfortable route, you end up back at the beginning because you don't get to the middle. In the middle of a labyrinth, and you can see that there where the benches are, when you get to the middle of a labyrinth, you are supposedly in the most vibrant energy vortex, where whatever you need to know, you know. And I always go in there and sit, and that's why the benches are there. Just sit and just listen. What did I come in here to know? But if you go with the easy route, and you decide to just jump over and go the other way and follow something comfortable, you're going to end up back at the beginning and start over again. How many of you have done that and had to start all over again? We've all done it. We have all done that thing where we get comfortable until we get uncomfortable and then say, who am I and why am I here? So it takes me back to the question of who are you? And actually, what I finally got to in the labyrinth, when I got to the center, and I had this overwhelming epiphany of people in my life and the loves of my life and the relationships in my life and the careers of my life and the many things I've done with my life, all of it swirling in my head of who are you? I sat down and all I heard inside of me was, James, what do you want? And so many things flooded my mind, and then I heard it again. It was like, no. Not what do you want to have. What do you want? Which is another way of saying, what do you value? Because if you want it, you value it. What do you want? And I didn't get an answer. I just didn't get an answer. And so I got up, I finished, and I just was like, okay, what do I want? And I started out. And then when you go out, the idea is that as you exit the labyrinth, you allow the energy to take it with you and you release, you let go. And you're letting go until you get to the end of the labyrinth. And the funny part was, as I left the labyrinth, I passed everyone I knew because I'd been so early, they were all on their way in. So everybody had to walk past me since I left the center. And I got to see everybody. And I'm still saying to myself, what do you want? What do you value? What is it that you're valuing in life so much that you want it? And Socrates, I think, said it best. Not just life itself, but good life is to be valued. I think we just want to live, we want to experience, we want to do all this, but that word good is really important. And you know, our entire philosophy, there is a power for what in the world? Good. There is a power for good in the universe. And then Ernest Holmes says, greater than you are. And I would say, not greater than you are, greater than you know yourself to be. That's what I would say. And you can use it. And not just use it, you can be it. So what we say here is there's a power for good in the universe, greater than you are, and you can use it because you are it. That's the philosophy. Yeah, that's what we teach. Tell it, buddy. It does make me laugh. When Ricky Byers does it, I buy it. When she does it, I buy it. So it's not just life itself, but good life to be valued. So, question, what do you consider to be a good life? If you were at that final moment of your life, if you looked back and said, I've led a good life, what would that mean to you? What would have happened? I bet it won't have anything to do with the size of the house you ended up buying. I bet it wouldn't have anything to do with how much money you have in the bank, because if you are in your last hour of life, you're not probably worried about your money anymore. You know, unless you're so obsessed that you're just worrying who's going to get it. Right? So, that last moment, what would a good life look like to you? What would it be? And I got to tell you, for me, as I was leaving the labyrinth, just like Tiffany, I had the same kind of reality check. It's like, this is a good life. Being on the labyrinth at Unity Village in Kansas City, Missouri, walking with all of my peeps and ones that I don't even know. And then I saw this mother and daughter who looked like the same person. And they were walking like really like hand in hand. And I just knew they were out of their depth. They were somehow they landed on this labyrinth and they had no idea why they were there. And they're walking really carefully together. And I saw them and I just turned and I waited for them. Actually, I was this way. I kept going. They kept coming towards me and I just turned sideways and they kind of stopped. And when they did, I reached over and hugged the little boy. I think he was like, what did he say he was, 10, 8, 12? 12. I hugged him and the mother just let go for a minute and looked at me and big smile. And then I hugged her and then they walked along their way. And then at the final day, they apparently wrote a letter to Martha Creek about their experience. They were Presbyterians. The little boy was a real dyed-in-the-wool Presbyterian. And he came there, I don't know why, I forget why he came there. Oh, he came there to hear Ricky Byers sing. He came there for the concert. And when the concert was over, and it was a giant concert and the room was packed with people from the village. And we went to the labyrinth. Most of them did not go to the labyrinth, the people that came to the concert. Most of them came to the concert and went home. But they somehow went to the labyrinth. And he was very afraid. He thought it was a cult. He was worried that God wasn't here, God was somewhere else, and the only way was through Jesus as his Savior. It was very, very, very Christian. And then the mother wrote an email to Martha Creek, which she read at our final banquet. And the letter was, I now understand that God is everywhere. And that God was on that labyrinth. And she said, thank you for helping my son realize a bigger picture, a bigger understanding. It so touched me. And I thought, thank God I was a part of that. Thank God I actually heard what I needed to hear and hugged them and said, you're welcome here. You are one of us. We are all the same. That's what I came out realizing. So this morning, Just Be You, the song, I looked up the girl who was one of the singers of whatever that group is, something light. And she was doing this concert, and she said, come join the concert. And it was all very open. And then she said, because I want you to come to the concert and see what life God has in mind for you. And I immediately was like, oh, there it is. There's that thing. And then I went, wait a minute. Oh my God, you're like that little Presbyterian boy. You're like that little Presbyterian boy who thinks that the only God that is applicable is the one that you know, which is universal life. It's the quantum field, which, by the way, when you tell that to most people, they look at you like you're crazy, right? Most of them believe in the guy in the God in the sky, that guy in the sky. And I thought to myself, I'm just like that. So I opened it up, and here's what I wrote. Right after I read it, it said, what life does God have in mind for you? When you get in touch with your most authentic self, with the vibration of wisdom and truth that is inherently inside who you are and what you are, what do you hear? That's the life God has in mind for you. And I got emotional this morning sitting there at the computer. I was like, there's got to be a way. There has got to be a way to bridge this world of its brokenness. There's got to be a way for everyone to respect one another, for everyone to love one another. There's got to be a way for the LGBTQ community to not have to call itself the LGBTQ community, where it's just people in the world, and we are all one people, and it doesn't matter. And so when I came to the final end of this whole thing, and I was like, who are you? Much like what Tiffany said, I have been the person waiting for someone to do what I just said. Now, I need to be the person who does what I just said, and to pay attention, and to actually do the work in the world that does more of that. And I believe that this week in Missouri, and this labyrinth walk, and all the stuff that went on, brought me to it to tell me exactly who I am. And it's not a title, and it's not an accomplishment, and it's not a successful play. It's none of it. It's all of it, but it's none of it. Because the truth is, who I want to be is something inside of me that's been telling me this for a very long time. And sometimes it takes walking to the center of a labyrinth and getting quiet and listening, because there I learned what God wants me to be.